Hi everyone, good evening. Charlotte here and welcome to Top Tip Tuesday this week. This evening we are going to talk about handling conflict between young children, which is a very tricky subject sometimes. And those of us with young children, particularly with more than one child, will know how tricky this can be to manage at times. So I'm just going to wait for a few moments for everyone to come on and then I'll be right with you. I'll take a sip. So, handling conflict between young children. What we're going to talk about this evening is how to intervene. No, when to intervene firstly, how to intervene, and how to ensure that all of the children participating in whatever the incident is, all children in the incident are feeling seen, feel that they are seen and validated. Hi Saskia. So the first thing for us to know when we're talking about conflict between young children, there's this fly that keeps flying around and just buzzing at me non-stop. It's one of those really small lazy flies and I just can't get rid of it. Well, it's not that lazy because I can't catch it, but it keeps bothering me. The first thing for us to know about conflict between young children is that it's perfectly normal. It does get physical, almost instantly actually. And that's just because of their undeveloped language skills. It's perfectly normal, and it will be very, very frequent. You may go through a stage with your toddler where it seems like every single interaction that they have with other children ends up in conflict, and this is completely normal. And it's for us to know, for all of us to know, that it's not anything that we're doing wrong. It's not a reflection of our parenting. It's not a reflection of our child. We don't need to start worrying and labeling our child that they are behaving in this way, or that they're aggressive, or sort of go down the rabbit hole of all these other things in our mind about what this means about our child. It doesn't mean anything. The only thing for us to know is that the way that we handle conflict between our young children, this sets a blueprint for the future, and this sets a blueprint for how they will deal with conflicts in the future, because of course in the first 6 years of life they are building it's their absorbent mind. Everything goes in unconsciously, and so if we can support them in the right way, then it means that these are the foundations, these are the building blocks of handling conflict when they're older. And it's for us to know that if the only reason that our children's behaviour might be a reflection of what we're doing is if we don't handle it correctly. If we respond with aggression, as it were, then of course there is an escalation that takes place. And there's been so many studies showing this, and particularly with regards to things like smacking, which obviously is what everyone used to do one generation, 2 generations, 3 generations ago. And now there's such a huge body of evidence that shows that smacking is very, very harmful long term, and the more aggression a child sees or experiences, the more aggressive they will become. It sounds completely obvious actually to our generation. It does sound completely obvious with the knowledge that we have of human psychology because of the advances made in science and psychology recently. But actually it wasn't that long ago where corporal punishment, where smacking was seen as commonplace, and I guess it is still commonplace in some parts of the world. So but what we do know is we don't want to do that at all. And as I said, the more aggression that we respond with, the more aggressive then our child is going to become. So it's in our best interest, in terms of when we're talking about when to intervene, is that when we intervene, we are calm. That's the first thing for us to know. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy staying calm, particularly if our child is the one who is the the perpetrator, as it were. If our child is the one who is being very physical and has, I'll use this term loosely, but caused the conflict, as it were, then it is actually really hard to stay calm. It is really hard to stay calm and cool and collected. But we just come back to my first point of this is completely normal for interactions between Piccolini or toddlers and preschoolers to result in physical, them hurting each other or trying to hurt each other or pushing each other because of their undeveloped language skills. So it's completely normal. Don't stress. When we see that it's happening, we've got to keep ourselves calm. And of course, this is going to look different. This keeping calm is going to look different depending on our family background, how we saw the adults around us respond to others, how we were responded to. This also depends on where we grew up in the world, what other external things were going on in our world. Did we live in a place that was a country that was peaceful, for example, and relatively stable, or did we grow up in a country where there was conflict, or all these huge things that can have an impact on the way that our children's brains are shaped. So we're going to respond differently according to lots of different factors, and that's why so much of parenting actually is looking at our own stuff, because we're not going to be aware of a lot of stuff that's stored, whether it's trauma or it's upset or responses. We're not going to be aware of this until we become parents and we respond to our children in certain ways that we don't actually recognize. There are times that we could interact with our child when we have been triggered for some reason, and we don't even know who we are, and that's because we're going to our unconscious memories from our childhood. Sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent then, so let's come back to what we're talking about, handling conflict. Hello everyone who's joined. Talking about handling conflict in young children. Firstly, it's completely normal. Secondly, we must keep calm. And what does keeping calm look like to you? Is it hi Jo. It's as Jo's come in, she's been on a previous call and we're talking about handling conflict and dealing with it by doing the Angela Merkel. She hasn't actually got back to me as to let me know whether the Angela Merkel has worked on her keeping calm in stressful situations. So yes, it's whatever our techniques are for keeping calm. That's what's really, really important. So when we're handling conflict with little children, when to intervene is a really, really good question, an important question, because we only want to intervene to stop our children or our child from hurting someone else. We are only intervening to stop physical behaviour. We are not intervening to solve problems. We're not intervening to be the lawmaker or the judge in arguments or disagreements. We are just intervening to keep everyone safe in that scenario. And I'll explain that. The reason for that is that we want to think from a very young age, we want to support our children in building problem-solving skills, building these skills for solving disagreements and working things out within their peers or their siblings for themselves. So we provide this container, this safe space and support, this collaborative support. We are close by. That's really important. When they're having an argument, if you can feel that it might escalate, for example, if it's your children, your two children, then we need to get close. If it's your child in the playground who's spotted, let's give an example, spotted another child's toy, and you know that your child is going to make a beeline, and your child, sure enough, goes over and then grabs someone else's toy, and then the other child's upset, and then there's going to be a conflict there. We've got to be really, really eagle-eyed and be really, really close to offer that collaborative support. It's a collaboration with our young children. It's not we're the big scary boss on high and we tell everyone what happens. That doesn't work with young children, particularly with Piccolini, when they have such a strong sense of themselves. They're really developing this strong sense of I or me a lot in this age group. and they can't think of anything else. If they want that toy, they're going to make a beeline for that toy, and they can't think of anything else. And they can't casually stroll up and say, oh, that looks interesting, might I have a little look? Oh, I'll just wait for 5 minutes until you finish playing with it. No, they don't have the language skills or the cognitive skills or the developed prefrontal cortex to do that age 2 or 3 or 4. Oh, that's a really good question, Karim. How do we diffuse a situation with the other child's parent in that situation if your parent begins to raise their voice? That's a really good question, Karim. Thank you. My answer would be to that, actually, is to get your child out of that situation as quickly as possible, because we are our children's bodyguards and we have to champion our children. So if there's going to be a situation where another parent is getting angry with your child, then I think best just to remove your child from that situation, because you don't want your child to feel that, you know, they've done something wrong or there's something wrong with them, because if they're 2 or 3 years old, they're not going to understand the complete picture anyway. So someone else's parent, you know, this other child's parent getting cross with them isn't going to help the situation at all. Just be our child's bodyguard, would be my advice in that situation. Obviously, if the other parent is a friend of yours, then you can have a conversation at another time, not in the heat of the moment. You know, all of us, or the children can't be rational in the heat of the moment, and us as parents actually can't be rational in the heat of the moment. I had an incident with some other children and my son actually just yesterday, and they were saying things to him, and they were older children, there was other stuff going on actually, and like throwing stones and stuff at my cat, and I really saw red, and I went into completely, you know, mummy lion mode, and just removed Harry from that situation, because there was no parent with the other children actually, and I wasn't going to stay around to try and make these other children understand that their behaviour was really firstly you know, inappropriate, because they were picking on my son and now my cat as well. So I think we've just got to be the bodyguard and just remove our child. If there's something that we feel we're going to get triggered and we're not going to be able to handle, then best to keep everyone out of it, because you don't really want your child to then see you getting really upset and shouting at someone else either. So that's going to really end badly, isn't it? So where were we on the thing? Oh yeah, so when to intervene. We just want to intervene and be close to them and support and collaborate with them. Just sit really close to them. And say, for example, if it's your own children, what we can be really careful of actually with our own children is we don't get into our way of thinking that one child's the victim and one child's always the perpetrator, because that also can then set a pattern of behaviour. That can set an entrenched pattern of behaviour actually, by, you know, if one child, we perceive that one child's always doing the biting or the hitting or what have you, but actually a sibling dynamic is incredibly complex, and it's this sort of dance where they do annoy each other, as it were, intentionally or unintentionally, who knows, but sometimes it really does seem intentional. So it's just being there for support. You can't fix everything. If every time they have an argument over a toy, whether it's your children or other children in the playground, we can't fix it. We can't fix it every time, because then as they get older and then the adults, what skills will they have for handling conflict? They're not going to have any skills for handling conflict, because we've told them who's right and who's wrong all the time. And actually the situation may not be someone right and someone wrong. If there's any more questions, if there's not any more questions, I can move on to how to intervene. And I've got a really good and funny example actually of something that happened. When was it? It was on Sunday, with my son and another child who's a very good friend of his, and we were at another friend's house, and my son had been using the mop. He loves to clean, and then he moved away to see something at the front door, and then when he came back, his friend was now using the mop. So Harry hadn't finished using the mop, but obviously the other child had seen that the mop was free and started using it. So Harry was very upset, and he went over and he tried to grab the mop. And so these two, they're both 3.5, sort of just pulling the mop. And I was close by, so what I did straight away is just sat down on the floor and I took hold of the mop, so that one, they couldn't hit each other with it because it had escalated quite quickly, and there was a tiny bit of pushing happening, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to take this away and say they're both wrong and then cause another problem. I want to support them through this. Can they, if I'm here really close, just holding this mop? And then, I mean, it actually got quite comical, because they then sort of fell to the floor and they were actually wrestling on the floor with this mop. And I mean, it was brilliant at the time. It was really, really comical, but they were, they had this vice-like grip on it. They were not going to let this go. And there was a little bit of pushing, sort of grabbing each other. So I just tried to block that. And the language I used, and I'll go through this in bullet points afterwards, but the language I used was, you both really want the mop, don't you? You hadn't finished with it. Harry, had you? Harney's using it now. You hadn't finished with it though, had you? Just keeping my voice really, really calm, sort of doing subtitles as to what was happening, just really saying out what I thought each child was feeling. And so I was still holding onto the mop, and I say to Hani, oh, you saw that the mop was free and you wanted to play with it, you wanted to work with it, you didn't realise that Harry hadn't finished yet, had you? And then Harry, above the wailing, he was like, no, me not finished. And Hani was saying, no, me want it. So but I just tried to keep my voice really, really calm and just validate, yeah, you really want it. This is really hard, isn't it? You both want to use the mop at the same time. And then if there was a bit of pushing and grabbing, I'd say, yeah, I'm here to keep you both safe. And then Hani started pulling against me as well, saying, no, me want it. And I said, I'm just going to hold it here to keep you both safe. And this was, I mean, it must have been like maybe 20, 30 seconds, nothing, not a big deal. And then suddenly Harry stood up and he just walked off. And he just walked off, and he seemed absolutely fine. So the reason I told that story was to let you know, it doesn't need to be the end of the world. It's, I'm used to Harry and Hani having this intensity between them, but also I just tried to remain calm. I knew what had happened. I could see what had happened. Both children had a valid point, as it were, and it was just a misunderstanding. Neither of them wanted to let go, which is fair enough. Both of them felt entitled to it. But I just wanted to kind of coach them through it, to let them know that I was there for support. If I don't know, said to Hani, oh, Harry was working with that, you couldn't have had it, then of course that would have caused a huge problem for him, and then he would have been really, really upset. Or on the other hand, if I'd said to Harry, no, you can't have it, Hani's having it now, that again would have caused a huge, huge problem. What we can do in these situations is just empathize, validate each child's feelings, just really be there with them, be in the present moment, and sort of be watchful what the other child's doing, their body language, and are they about to hit or something, and just try and be super present in that moment, so that you can support both children effectively. And so I'll go through the things that you can say. In that the key is to have these phrases in the heat of the moment. So I've just broken it down to the 5 phrases that I sort of have on auto repeat in these difficult situations, or potentially difficult situations. So the first one is, so if they are in the hitting stage, I'm going to block you from hitting, or I'm going to block your hands to keep you both safe. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing would be, you both want to play with this, don't you? I know this is hard. And also, if it's something that you can put your hand on, so they're not going to start bashing each other with it, then you might need to do that. Like with the mop, it was quite easy. I just held onto it with 2 hands. And just affirm, you both really want to work with this, or you both really want to play with this at the moment. I can see it's hard. You both really want it. And then the third thing you can say is, you had it and now he has it. You want it back, don't you? Again, just subtitling what's going on, subtitling the action. so that the children can feel heard and feel validated. The fourth thing, just keep affirming, I'm here to support you both. Yeah, I know you can handle this. I'm here to support you both. I'm right here to keep you both safe. Variations on that. And then afterwards, say when the intensity of the situation's just dissipated a little bit, you can just give some extra validation to the child. So say one of you's come for a cuddle, or your child, or one of you, if it's siblings, come to sit on your lap, as you're just giving them a cuddle and rubbing their back, or whatever it is they like to calm, how they like to connect with you. You could just very casually validate it and say, oh, that was a tricky situation, wasn't it? You both wanted to work with that, or you didn't want Olivia to touch that, did you? So again, you're validating the feelings, and the reason that this is important is this just really, really lays these foundations of empathy, of patience, of knowing that they're being heard. We're not solving this situation for them. We can't solve the situation for them, because if we intervened every time, then it's not going to be fair, isn't it? It's not going to be fair, is it? What we want to do is to just support them, so that even when they have these big feelings, and even when they're absolutely furious, we're there on their side. We're there, as I said earlier on to the question, we're their bodyguard, we're their support system, and just so that they know 100% that we've got their back, and we're not going to be we don't need to fix it, but what we can do, as I said, the 5 points we went through, we can give this supportive language when we're in the heat of the moment. And also, if with siblings is a good example, actually. So they're playing, and then you hear a wail from the other room, and then one of them comes in and screams and says, "Ah, this happened, and she took this, or he hit me," or whatever it might be. Again, this is just an opportunity to connect, an opportunity to collaborate with our children. So it's sitting down straight away, or putting them onto your lap, and inviting them to talk about what's happened to you. Say, "Oh, Harry did this," or "Harry did that," and I say, "Yeah, that sounds difficult. You seem really upset about that." Just validate, repeat back what they're saying to you. So mirror back what they're saying to you, and then they really, really feel heard. And then, hi, Karim. Do you find yourself in more situations like this with your son compared to your daughter? Sorry, I have a lot of questions. I'd say at the moment, yes, but I don't know that it's got anything to do with being a boy, if that's what your question is. The question is that they're so different in the way that they have been, their environment is so different. So for example, Olivia just had Olivia for 2.5 years before Harry was born. So she didn't ever have to share anything. She didn't ever have to have a situation, and she was a very reserved child until she was about 3.5. So when we went on play dates, when we went to the playgrounds, when we went to people's houses, she would never be the child who would dive in and want stuff straight away. And it's only since Harry was born, and then once Harry was crawling, and actually this leads into a point that I'm going to make later, actually, about how long this process is of supporting them with collaboration. Olivia now is older, so she's 5.5, or almost 6. She'll be 6 in December, and then Harry is only 3.5, coming up to 3.5. So she now has way, way more skills, being able to, because we've been practicing this approach for 5.5, almost 6 years. Whereas Harry, from the word go, as soon as he was born, he had a big sister who would, not intentionally, but it's how they connect, who would take the pet's toys, and the second one has to, I don't want to say fight for survival, because that sounds wrong, has to be feisty, has to have that gutsiness in them. So I don't think it's anything to do with Harry being a boy. I think it's more that he's practiced these skills. He's had a chance to practice these skills. He's had people take things from him, and his personality is very different when he's with Olivia and when he's not with Olivia. When he's with Olivia, he's very, very confident and very, very out there, and he he can do anything and conquer anything. But when Olivia's not around, he's very much more reserved, and he's very much more quiet, like Olivia was at the same age. So I don't know if that answers your question. And also Harry's so much younger, so situations that this happen, like this happens from about 18 months to about 3.5, where there's this period of intensity about taking other children's toys or what have you. It's Harry's so much younger, I can't really tell. I mean, they're dealing with it pretty well now, actually, but I can't really tell yet what Harry's going to be like when he's sort of come out of this stage of intensity, because it is an intense stage, from in the Piccolini stage, it is very intense. So yes, hope that answers your question. And that leads me in nicely to talking about how this is a process. As I said, Harry and Olivia have been having to work out conflict since Harry started crawling at 6 months old, and then he could come over and take Olivia's work. And then Olivia would realise that this was then a game that would provoke her little brother, and then she could go and take his work as well. Now at almost... Sorry, I think we just lost connection there. I don't know what happened. So I was saying that this is a long process. Now, 3 years later, Olivia almost 6 and Harry at 3.5, I am now seeing the results of this approach of being collaborative and supporting the children in this type of conflict, because now pretty much at home they can sort out most things by themselves between them. And it's definitely a long process. This isn't something when your toddler goes over and grabs something from another child, they're not going to get it the first time or the 5th time or the 100th time. That's not something that they should do. It's a process of years, and as I say, this is 3 years of daily work with Harry and Olivia to help them understand this and to support them in conflict resolution, so that they're going to have these skills moving forward. And also what I'd say is that when maybe another point I could have said about how to intervene, is that if your children do want to play with something else that another child's got, it's not for us to shame them or say, oh, don't play with that, play with this, or to try and distract them from that. It's actually to lean into those feelings and say, oh, that little boy's playing with that at the moment. State what's actually happening. He's playing with that at the moment. Once he's finished, we can ask him if you can play with it. And to say things like, oh, it's not yours, you can't touch it, that's really, really not helpful, because one, Piccolini doesn't get that concept that he can't touch it and it's not his. And secondly, it just creates such friction that there's no point saying it, because the more you say he can't have it, the more he or she is going to want to have it. So for us to just... If they want to play with something, if your daughter really wants to play with something that someone else is playing with, and she keeps coming over, and then you can just say, I can't let you take that from your friend. I can't let you take that from him. And then, she might get really upset, and she might get really cross with you and scream and try and snatch it or push the other child or what have you. And you can just be really supportive. I can't let you take that from her. She's playing with it at the moment. She'll let you know. We'll wait here until she's finished. And then when your child if she's got them really, really upset and she needs to have a big release because she feels so frustrated, that's okay. She can have a big release because that's something that she's processing, she's working through. And if she's able to, then she can sit on your lap. And this is what I do with Harry, and which has worked really, really well, is if there's something he wants to play with, then I'll say, do you want to sit on my lap and let's watch the little girl play with it? And then we'll see if you can play with it when she's finished. And then you kind of talk through. I'd say, oh, look, she's turning it over in her hands now, and now she's pushing the car through the sand. Again, just sort of coaching them, talking them through, giving them the subtitles of what's going on, so it can take away some of their intensity and allow them to just sit and watch what it is that they want to play with. It's helping them grow patience, even though we're not telling them that they're growing patience, but if they can defer their wishes. It's all this thing about Piccolinis and young children deferring their wishes. It's a slow process, and it's a gentle process with them, because they are instant, they're in the present moment, and when they see something they want it straight away. But if we can support them in deferring their wishes, for even if it's 30 seconds, even if it's for a minute, and supporting them every time they want to go and grab something. She's playing with it at the moment. I can't let you take it. Let's sit and watch together when she plays with it. That type of, it's really a collaboration. They're not doing it to be naughty, and they're not doing it to be bad, and then there's nothing wrong with them. It's perfectly okay for them to want the other thing, but it's also okay for us to set a boundary and say, sorry, you can't take that. And Harry was really in that stage. It seems a long time ago now, like 18 months ago. He had a 3-month stage of just taking toys from one particular child, actually a very good friend of ours, and then he would bite as well if he didn't get what he wanted. And so it was a really tricky situation for a couple of months. So we would limit those play dates in that period of time, which is one thing that we did. And I just tried to be as supportive as possible. And when it happened, you just say, no, I can't let you do that. Hitting hurts or biting hurts, whatever it was. You know, it's okay for them to express their feelings. It's okay for them to be really angry, but you're there to keep them safe. And that's what our role is. And then by keeping everyone safe and validating everyone's feelings, that's how we allow them to be seen. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm just going to have a sip of lemon while I check my bullet points. I think all there was on my bullet points was the thing that I always end up saying in these Instagram lives, is trusting in our children's innate goodness. If we can give them some really basic skills to handle conflict at this age, then this is really their building blocks and their foundations for the future. Conflict will happen naturally with young children with undeveloped language skills. That's completely normal. The whole of early childhood with us is a collaboration as their parents. I mean, throughout childhood, but even more so with young children. I think with young children that often society and maybe culture, I don't really know what it is, but there is a huge expectation on the behaviour of young children, particularly 2 and 3-year-olds, which isn't in any way aligned with the reality of what they can cope with and what they are capable of. You know, example of trying to make young children share, it just doesn't, I mean, I've done Instagram live on that, so I won't go down there, but it's, you know, people expect young children to share, and they can't do it on demand, and they shouldn't do it on demand because their brains aren't developed enough for them to do it, for example. So I think generally we have very unrealistic expectations of what children can handle and can't handle with their emotions. Everything in parenthood should be about collaboration. We should always see the innate goodness in our children, because they're just trying to construct being a human being. You know, I realised I was talking to someone about Harry, and it's like, it's so mad to think he's only been on the planet for, what is it, a little over 1,000 days. You know, how on earth can we expect 3-year-olds to have mastered all these things when they've only been on the planet for 1,000 days? You know, it's just bonkers, isn't it? So I think that's worth keeping in mind. And that if you do have a situation where your child is going through a stage where they are intensely physical and there is a lot of conflict and interactions, you can look at limiting play dates. You can do things like hard in Dubai in the summer, but only have play times in big spaces or outdoors as much as possible. A lot of children will feel more stress, and there'll be more likely to be conflict in the small space, of course, because they feel enclosed and there's nowhere to go, so they'll lash out. Things like that you can do, and just stay really close to them and see the best in them and validate their feelings would be the best advice I could give. So, thank you. I don't think there's anything else. I'll just check on my bullet points. Thank you all very much for joining this evening. I hope you've enjoyed this session, and this will lead in to my YouTube video, which will be live on Saturday, and my YouTube video, my 5-minute parent enrichment session on YouTube this Saturday. will be about handling conflict with young children. So we'll do 5 ways to deal with conflict in young children on my YouTube channel, which is Enriching Environments. So thanks, Nuran. Nice to see you. And if you're not following me already, please do on Instagram or on Facebook at Enriching Environments. I'm very excited to let you know about, thank you for the hearts, to let you know about my first online parent enrichment course that will be live within the next couple of weeks. And as things are opening up here in Dubai, we'll be doing more workshops and more one-to-one parent enrichment consultations whenever everyone is ready to receive them. So, thank you all so much for watching, and my website is enrichingenvironments.com. Don't forget, this Friday there is an incredible film that we are screening at Yoga House in Greens called Childhood, and it is a documentary on a kindergarten in Norway, which basically has children from 1 to 7 years old, and they are in this incredible space in nature, and the things that these children are doing in terms of making things and sawing wood and chopping trees and all of this, and the naturalness, the whole feel of this documentary, of this film, is just so beautiful, and really focusing on children's need to be free, to need to be outdoors, to need to explore, to feel at one with nature. So please do join me at Yoga House in Greens on Friday, this Friday, the 14th of August at 7:30 p.m. You can book by going to the link in my bio on Instagram or via the Yoga House website. But, well, actually, it's the link in the bio on the Yoga House Instagram and the link in the bio in my Instagram as well, so at Enriching Environments. So I really do hope I'll see you on Friday evening at Yoga House in Greens, and we'll broadcast the discussion afterwards via Insta Live as well. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye-bye.